federal laws? We have no laws. How can you have a judicial system when you have no laws? Now let's say we did have laws, Naya. What would we need next? What would we need next after laws? What would you need after laws? What are you going to do if somebody breaks the law? You got to enforce it. So we have no law enforcement officers. So even if we had laws, there was no law enforcement officers to enforce such laws. Now, Laramie, let's say we did have federal laws and we did have federal law enforcement officers. What don't we have that we would need now? So you have broken a law, my dear. You have been arrested by law enforcement officers for breaking that law, but what do we do with you next?
Put you in jail, but first you need a trial.
Yeah, we have no court system. There's no court system to decide. So these are problems in the area of judicial problems that had to be taken care of to organize a new federal government. We had no federal laws, we had no law enforcement officers, and we had no court system or judicial system to take care of lawbreakers. Okay? So that was a huge area of concern. Your second area of concern, or category of concern, were financial problems. Financial problems. What do I mean by that? Ain't got no money. Which means you have some. It's a double negative. We didn't have any money. There was very little money in the new country. And we owed a tremendous debt from what? Revolutionary War. We were borrowing money like crazy all across the world to try to finance this war. So number one, under financial problems, there was very little money in the new country. Number two, the nation owed a large debt from the Revolutionary War that had to be paid back. Now let's say, what's our next problem? We don't have any money, we owe a big debt. What do we got to do to get money? You got to tax people. Well, we don't have any tax system. That's number three. There was no method in place for collecting any taxes to raise any revenue. So we don't have any money, we owe a huge debt from the Revolutionary War, and we have no way to raise any money through taxes. Now, do you think people are going to complain about paying taxes now? No, because they're going to have representation. But let's say that we do have a method in place for collecting taxes to raise revenue. What's the next problem? What? No, we got a lot of people collected, all kinds of people that fought for their freedom. Some died, however, but... So, okay, all of a sudden, it's going to cost you, I'm going to start taxing you guys in here, because I can't pay for the handouts anymore. So you're all going to give me $10.
Bucks.
$10.
No currency. Yeah.
No, we've got gold, silver, and currency, but all of a sudden I'm standing here with all this money, what am I going to do with it?
No banks.
No banks. No federal treasury is what you would call it. No place to put the tax money. So, we don't have any money. We owe a huge debt from the Revolutionary War. We have no method in place for collecting taxes to raise money. And we don't have any federal treasury to put any money if we did. We have nothing financially going for us. Zero. That was a huge area of concern in putting together a new government. And our third problem area were defense problems. Defense problems. Gabe, what do I mean by defense problems?
We can't protect ourselves.
Why? You're exactly right, but why? Our military was incredibly weak right after the Revolutionary War. Did we win the Revolutionary War because we were tougher than the British? In ways, but could they have brought another army over here? If they would have brought another army over here, do you think we would have won this war? No. Probably not. We won the war because they got tired of fighting it. We didn't like knock them out and they never got up again. They just weren't willing to commit anymore. Our military might have been at the weakest point right after the Revolutionary War, which made us incredibly vulnerable from attack from foreign countries. If anybody wanted to take over the United States after the Revolutionary War, that would have been the time to do it, because we were at our weakest point. Absolutely. So, if I get mad at Joe and I'm bigger than him, and I'm coming over, and I'm going to take over, I'm going to take his pencil, I'm going to take his binder, because that thing is important. And he's weak, and he can't keep me from taking his binder and pencil. What's his only recourse?
Spain.
What?
Spain.
No. What's his only recourse? If I'm coming at you right now, I'm taking that pencil, and I'm taking that goofy looking bracelet there, and I'm taking this 3-ring binder, and I might take your shoes. And you can't stop me because you're too weak. What's your only recourse? Well, you couldn't run away, but I'd catch you. So you ran away, and now I got you. What's your only recourse? No, you don't want to surrender.
You need your shoes, Joe.
What are you going to do to keep me from taking all that stuff? You're going to say, hey, wait a minute, let's talk about this. Let's negotiate. And so the third point of this is we had a weak military, we were very vulnerable, and we had no foreign policy. Okay, what's foreign policy? Who you're going to get along with and who you're not. Okay, who do we owe big time right now? France. Okay, and we probably like to get along with Britain if we could, but we promised the French, remember, that we would never make a separate treaty with them. Okay, so Joe's only recourse in me taking everything he has and taking over the country of Joe is we're going to negotiate. Well, let's be friends. I'll tell you what, for friends, I'll give you my left shoe. Okay, so that was the problem. So defense problems were the third problem we had. Now, our next subtopic then is going to start dealing with these problems. And the subtopic is Congress goes to work. Which of these three do you think they're going to hit first?
Money.
Judicial, financial, or defense?
Defense.
They're actually going to hit judicial first. You can't run a country a lawless country. You can't do it. Okay? So really the most important things to get established is that part. So one of the first and most important measures that Congress adopted was called the Judiciary Act of 1789. The Judiciary Act of 1789. And what it did, in essence, was create the first federal court system in America. It established the first federal court system in America. So one of the first and most important measures Congress adopted at this point was called the Judiciary Act of 1789. And the Judiciary Act of 1789 established the first federal court system in America. And this court system consisted of 3 branches. Okay, here's the federal court system. Okay, kind of. 3 branches. The first branch are going to be district courts. They're going to establish district courts. How many of those are they going to have, Julie?
6.
Why would they have 6?
I don't know.
Okay, so I want you to think. We're going to get this. How many do you think they have?
13.
District 13. Atta girl. 13 district courts. 1 for each state. Now, if you didn't like the decision that happened in your district court, you would go to a circuit court and plead your case.
Is that where we pay our parking tickets?
No, that's a different thing. Yeah. It is. Now, how many circuit courts were there, Megan? Now, you got to remember, there's 13 district courts, 1 for each state, and if you don't like the decision there, you could appeal to the circuit court, so there'd be less. How many you guess?
6.
Less.
3.
3. Not a girl. 3 circuit courts. And what was the last one called? A Supreme Court. And how many were there? How many Supreme Courts are there now and were there then, maybe? How many Supreme Courts do we have in this country? 1. That's right, 1. So, the Judiciary Act of 1789 established the first federal court system in America, which consisted of 3 branches. 13 district courts, 1 in each state. 3 circuit courts. Where did they put those, do you think? I don't, it's not specifically, but generally. What's that?
Where everybody wants.
Well, kind of. So here are the 13 colonies. Where'd they put those?
Oh, like
They put them all right here. They're all right here.
in the middle.
They separated them evenly.
Yep.
Okay? So the 13 circuit, or 3 circuit courts were spread evenly across the country. And then they had one Supreme Court. Now in this Supreme Court, they had one Chief Justice and 5 Associate Justices. That made up the Supreme Court. Okay, who was our first Chief Justice of the Supreme Court? We've talked about him. I said we'd get back to him later. Late in our lecture on Part 2 of the Revolutionary War. Who's our first Supreme Court Justice? One of the men that went and negotiated the treaty with England at the end. John Jay is our first Supreme Court Justice. Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. So, the federal court system consists of 3 branches, 13 district courts, 1 in each state, 3 circuit courts spread evenly across the country, and 1 Supreme Court that established 1 Chief Justice and 5 Associate Justices. The first Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court was John Jay. Now, at this time in American history, people believed themselves as citizens of individual states, not a federal system. Think about that again. At this time in history, citizens in the United States of America believed themselves not citizens of a United States, but citizens of individual states, because that's how it always was. So what's the first thing the federal government had to do? Not yet. You're close. They had to abolish each of the 13 states from having their own individual government. So this new federal government said, the state government you have in the state of Mickelson is no longer there. Now, so in essence, because the federal government abolished each of the 13 states from having an independent government, who did the Judiciary Act give supreme power over all states?
President?
Supreme power.
John Jay.
Oh.
Or the Supreme Court. So at this point, the Supreme Court controls all 13 states. Now, what does the Supreme Court and Congress, etc., now have to establish to ensure that all states follow one Constitution? That's right. And because of this point here is when the Supreme Court, working with the President, Vice President, Congress, formed what we know today as the United States Constitution. That had to be formed to get all 13 states to follow the same Constitution. Does that mean they may not have their own state constitutions later? But though we'll talk about that. But the point is, they leveled the playing field and said, the Judiciary Act will be a crucial piece of legislation. This law is going to ensure that all states will follow the newly formed United States Constitution. Now, I could spend a lot of time talking about that, the Bill of Rights and all that. You will learn that in government. And I will leave it to the government people to do that for you. Okay? So, we've handled the judiciary problem, have we not, that we talked about as one of the 3? So now, tomorrow, we're going to move on to Congress deals with repaying the government debt, and we're going to work on the financial problems that this country's in. Okay? So we're going to deal tomorrow with Congress deals with repaying the government debt. And who's going to be the man responsible to get us on sound footing financially? Alexander Hamilton. Yes, sir, Bob.
That play.
Yeah.
Oh, we were just talking about him.
There's a lot to Alexander Hamilton other than just that play.
Shut up.